screen and move this guy over and open him up. Okay, here we go. Can you hear me? Okay, so
Yep.
intro to master schedule at PUSD. Okay, this is at PUSD because this is definitely with Aries. Okay, so the first thing you're going to have to do is set up a timeline. You're going to have to set dates for your academic plans. When are you going to get those done? Your course requests, which hopefully will come from the academic plans. But if you didn't do the academic plans, then you will do them through, you will do your course requests. Then you will have to clean up your course requests. You're going to have to figure out your staffing. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out dates for. Also, like if people go on vacation and you're going to be working over the summer, just working all that together so that you really have a timeline. Okay, the most important thing, and this is what the counselors do, this is going to be course requests. You have to complete your academic plans, have a date for that. So we try to set that up by April 15th. We say finish your academic plans because then they will transfer over to course requests. And then we say you have to have all your course requests fixed and done by, we tried the last day of April, so that on the first day of May, we're already starting to work on the master schedule. It doesn't always work because there are holdups. You have to check for your double classes, right? So if you have like a double math class, on academic plans, you weren't able to put it in on double. In course request, you could, but if you didn't do it correctly or you matched them up incorrectly, like you have to just double check that. Same with your English classes, your ELD classes, any classes that are tied together. You also have to make sure with your course requests that all your kids that have special education are in their correct course requests. Same for AP, any special programs, right? That's all going to go with course requests. So as counselors, you all know this, but it's just a little refresher course to let you know how important that is to do. Because without that, or if that isn't cleaned up, you really can't run the master schedule well. Okay, so one thing that we do is we run reports for fewer or more than, for us, it's 9 classes. For you, it might be 7 classes. It's whatever you have. So we run a report and we see that everybody has all those course requests. And sometimes we just write the word or the class elective, and then we'll fill that in later if a kid didn't give us their electives. Like maybe they only gave us 7 of their 8 classes and they don't need anything else. So then we write the word elective. Okay, so now examine which courses will be offered and who can teach them and how many are needed. So first you use your course request tally. You figure out how many sections are needed of each course. For example, if you have an ethnic studies course and there are 183 total students, you will need to figure out, are you going to have 5 sections or 6 sections of it, right? Because it's not going to fall perfectly into place. And then if you only have one teacher that can teach ethnic studies, maybe you're only going to have 5 sections of it because maybe they have to have an extra prep. So first do your course tally. And there is a report. I don't know if you can see me holding it up, but there is a report called Course Request Tally. And it gives you every single course and how many students asked for it. So very important that you look at that. And then if you have different programs, you'll have to add those together. So below that, I have English to 125 students because 61 are AEM, 46 are BE, and 18 are ESA, right? So you have them in 3 different academies. It's still English 2 students. So you have to know how many to have. And then same with Puente, like we had 102 students. Well, that was 41 in one, 28 in another, and 33 in another. And you're gonna have to move around some kids because that class of 41, like that's too many. So that was 41 in the Arts Academy. Well, maybe 4 of them will have to go over to that 28 number. right? Or maybe one of them will not be in Puente. You're going to have to make those decisions. Okay, so now you're going to chart everything. You're going to chart your English, and all I did was English 1 and 2 because it just didn't fit. I feel like it would have been too small. So you're going to chart how many students have requested each type of English 1. So if you only have one type of English 1, it's fine. It would, it would all be together. But for us, we have 3 different academies. So it's 75 in AEM, 76 in Business Academy, and 60 in ESA, which is our Engineering Academy. So I like to chart it all. I like to figure out how many and then figure out what does that mean in courses or in sections. So here I'm going to need 2 in the Arts Academy, 2 in the Business Academy, 2 in the ESA Academy. So you would do that, like the same thing for math. You would do it for math. You would do it for all the departments, right? History, English, math, science, PE, world language, your academy classes, your electives. And it takes quite a while, but you want to do it because later on when you're talking, well, I do it with my principal. So when I'm talking to my principal about it, we can look up those numbers easily. We don't have to go back to the tally and try to tally them up again and maybe make a mistake. Okay, the next thing you have to look at are your teachers. Which teacher can teach which subjects, right? Like what are they credentialed for? So we've had situations where we're like, oh, we'll give this teacher biology and chemistry, but they don't have a biology credential. So we can't do that. So you really have to know what your teachers can teach. And every now and then you'll have a teacher that says, oh, I want to teach blah, blah, blah. Well, can they teach that? So you have to call the district and find out if they can teach it. Then you have to figure out your preps, your conference periods. So for Muir, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but we have odd and even days. So on odd days, we have periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. And on even days, we have periods 2, 4, 6, and 8. Well, a teacher needs a conference period each day. So by contract, they will only teach 3 classes every day. And you have to give them a prep, a conference period. Well, that conference period on odd days has to be with their department. So all the English teachers get 3rd period off. All the math teachers get 5th period off. All the science teachers get 7th period off. So it starts to cause restrictions within your master schedule. And on even days, they meet by academy. So for example, on period 7, you will not have any science classes because all the science teachers are meeting. You also have to figure out who's on a special percentage. Some of our teachers only teach 80%, either by health reasons or contracts or whatever it may be. So you can't spread them out all day. You have to do them like just in the middle or just at the end of the day. And then how many different courses can you really give a teacher? We try to give only 2 preps with maybe a variation in there. So like if they teach English 2 and English 3, but then they also teach the Puente English, well, that's kind of like English 2. So we leave it, that we really only count it as 2. With some teachers, we will have to ask them to teach 3 preps. It has gone to 4, but we try not to do that. But again, it causes a lot of restrictions. You don't have every single class, every single period. Okay, you have to distribute the courses. So once you figure out how many sections and which teachers, are teaching or are qualified to teach which courses, you now have to distribute them by teacher. So for example, if we need 6 sections of bio, 6 sections of chemistry, 8 sections of physics, 5 sections of environmental science, so forth and so on, as I have written here, you would have to figure out which teacher is teaching which courses. So teacher A is going to teach 3 chemistry and 3 bio. Teacher B is going to teach 2 physics. Teacher C is going to teach 6 physics. So there you have your 8 physics, plus you have your chemistry with the 4 and the 3. So first you're figuring out how many sections, then which teachers can teach them, distribute them among the teachers, and then we play a little shell game and we move things around. And then you place them into periods. Placing the teachers into periods is really like the hardest part. For the most part, we keep the schedule that we had the previous year unless we know that there were real problems with it. But there will be differences. Like, for example, our current junior class will be moving up as seniors, and there's more of them than there are seniors now. So we're going to have to add like an extra government, an extra English. And you'll have that with courses, or maybe you have less freshmen coming in as you did this year. So now you're going to have to redistribute that. So it doesn't stay the same, but it gives you a nice start. Now, if you're starting right from the beginning and you're scrapping everything and you're starting over, I suggest that you have a big chart and you start putting them in little by little. You'll start to see patterns. I always do that. I don't know if you can see me, but I always do this and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm moving chemistry over here and moving this English over here. And you start to just see things that way. Because it's all like you've charted everything. It will help. Trust me, it will help. So placing the periods is the hardest part. And then I have a little chart where I do them by group, like by the grade and where they go for. So you figure out like where they go for English, make sure that doesn't conflict with where they're going for their math, right? Like if they're in opposition of one another, is there another one to balance it out? So I came up with dumb little worksheets, again, charts, right? Little charts that I do to figure out. And then I even use like Lego pieces to say, okay, just like as a possible student, if this student is doing this and this student is doing that, will it work? If it works, then I'm going to say, okay, let's put that in. And I always try to find the conflicts first. So like the AP classes, where are they and can we put them in different places? For example, your AP World with your Math 2 honors. Your Math 2 honors is usually for your sophomores and your AP World is for your sophomores. And you only have maybe one class of it. So you don't want to put them the same period because that's going to cause a conflict. And there will always be some conflicts, and you're just going to have to make decisions as to where those kids will be switched to. Like, okay, well, maybe you don't get physics this year, you get biology because I can't fit physics in. But you're still going to get your requirements. Okay, so let's look at terminology. So singleton, you'll hear singleton. When people talk about master schedule, you'll hear the word singleton, doubleton, tied classes, and then tumble. And I may have made up tumble because that's the word I use, but singleton is a class that only meets once. So for example, maybe a yearbook class that's 6 period, right? It only meets once, it's your singleton. Figure out who those kids are in your singletons and what other classes they are taking. There is something called a conflict matrix, but the way Aries does it, I don't feel is very helpful. With the conflict matrix, in other systems, what it shows you is if a kid has this class, how many times does it conflict with this other class? And it shows it like for every single class. So you still have to know what you're looking for. So I would say look at all your singletons and then figure out if there are like 5 kids in there that have the AP English and you have the AP English that same period, maybe we do move the AP English. Or maybe you're willing to sacrifice 5. Okay, well, 5 don't get yearbook then, right? Maybe that's not such a big deal. And like I keep saying, you're gonna have to make those decisions. Doubleton is also a course, it meets only twice, or you only have 2 sections of it rather. You have 2 sections of it. And that would be, so let's just say you have 2 sections of AP World and you only have that 1 section of the math. Well, make sure that if they do conflict, that at least kids could get into that other section and that other section doesn't conflict with other classes. And then tied classes are going to be classes that are tied to each other. These are usually your double English, your double math, your ELD classes, because period 1 has to go with period 2. Or in some circumstances, it's like period 2 has to go with period 7. It's however you've tied them in your schedule. There's a special coding that has to go in for that when you create your classes so that you tie the classes together so that when kids tumble into those classes, then you can make sure that if they tumbled into this one, that means they tumbled into the other one. They wouldn't get the improper classes, right? Like one from one tied section and one from some other tied section. So you just have to be careful with that. And tumble, I just used the word. Tumble is when we actually like push the button and have the schedulers schedule everyone for us. There's an individual tumble section or button, and then there's a whole school one. When you do the whole school one, for the first time around, you're hoping to get like a really high percentage. It doesn't always happen. But you're hoping to get a high percentage. Conflicts, again, like I was saying, just look for the conflicts between the singletons. Here we go, like the AP Calculus and the AP English. Most AP Calculus students are going to be your seniors. Your AP English Lit is mainly seniors. You don't want them the same period, all right? Just pick some other period. Run the course request. Okay, so after the course request, after the course tally, right? That one told us how many sections we would have. You then can do, once you have all your courses in periods, you can run the course request tally. This will tell you how many rejects you have for each course. So sometimes it's going to be that you're short on seats. So you have like 150 requests for it, but you only have 120 seats. So that in that case, you would have to create a new section of it. And you'd have to go back to what you've planned and where can you move one teacher to teach that period, you know? Sometimes you'll have the course request analysis tell you that this will never work because that class does not exist. So let's just say that you programmed kids into the band class, but you use the 8th grade number. Well, if you use the 8th grade number, those kids will never be able to go in there because they're a 10th grader. So you have to use the 9th through 12th grade number. So it's really important that you're paying attention to your course numbers. And again, if courses are not tied correctly, so there's a lot of background work before you do it all. If courses are not tied correctly, then you're going to have to troubleshoot and figure out what happened. Another thing is seat counts. Just like I said earlier, if you have too many kids requesting a class and then not enough for that particular class, you'll have to make up another class. Or maybe you're going to transfer them if it was an elective. Oh, we have a teacher over here teaching creative writing, but only 5 people requested it. Well, now those 30 extras, maybe they get switched over to creative writing. I know it's not perfect, but there's really no other way to do it. Do we have questions so far? No. Okay. You have to go back and check if you can move certain periods to solve a problem. But most of the time, once you have already tumbled and you've think you're at a good percentage, you will have to go back to change the student requests. So let's say that you have a good percentage, you know, like 60 is okay to start with, but let's say now you're at 80 because you've solved some problems. You'll have to go back now and really you can run, there's quite a few reports that you can run that will help you. You can run a class load analysis by course and period. You could perform a query by grade and counselor. And then for that one, you just hit next rejected student, and you can work on it one by one. You can run a report for students with gaps in their schedule, students with 2 or more classes in a period, students with incomplete schedules, class list by section, no course requests, less than a certain number of course requests, etc. So there's a lot of reports that can help you. And these are the ones that I pretty much use, but not everybody uses all of these. Some schools will only use a few of these. Okay, and then you're gonna tumble again, and you're gonna fix the problems, and you're gonna see a higher percentage, which is nice. It always is pretty exciting when you see the higher percentages. Like each time you're like, yes, it's 89% now. I know I'm a dork. Okay. If you are overloading classes, then when you tumble again, you're simply going to cause the problem in a different student. So you have to find a better solution because it's going to go back down. And if you are first setting them up at 32, you know, to get a good even mix of students, you're going to have a hard time. So we do 32 to begin with, and then we move them up to 36, like at the very end, because some classes will have 36 students. We really try not to go above that. And if we do go above it, we do have to go back and then balance out the classes. So like for that one that you put in, you know that you have to take one out. And counselors, you all know how this works because when we're fixing schedules, like that's what we're doing. But this is like in the grand scheme of things, right? You are trying to do as much as you can so that we don't have to do all those individual changes. And then you'll have situations, you all know this, where you have 38 in one physics class and 12 in another class. And you would have to, if you could do it early on when it's still master schedule in SMS, which is like our playground area, as opposed to, I don't know, what's it called? MS, just master schedule. It's scheduling master schedule as opposed to, there's another letter in there. But then you can
it's
say,
MST, right?
Is it MST and SMS? Okay. So when you're in SMS, you can play around a lot more. Once you're in MST, that's gonna prohibit you from really changing a lot. So in SMS, if you could go in early and you see that there's 12 students in one class and 38 in the other, figure out why everybody has to go to that 38, like what's happening there. And hopefully you can move something to a different period or, you know, move one elective. It's amazing how sometimes you can move. I've moved like a chemistry class and then like swapped it for a teacher. One now teaches biology, one more biology, and this one teaches one more chemistry. They swapped. And all of a sudden, like things just solved for all of those. And if it doesn't solve, you can always go back to the version that you had right before that. So we usually like make a little announcement where we say like, we're tumbling, nobody touch anything. So we tumble, we see the percentages, we analyze it really quickly. If we like it, we keep it. And we're like, okay, you can change stuff again. If we don't like it, we'll go back and then we'll say, okay, you can change stuff again. Because if you're changing while you're in a different version, that isn't going to stick. So you'll think you have fixed a kid, but you were working in the wrong version. Once you are done tumbling, like you've decided as a school or as maybe you, your admin, and a few other people that you're not gonna You're not going to tumble anymore. Now we're just going to make some creative uh, changes, right? At the end of it all, you will make sure everyone has a full schedule, right? Some students will have other preferences that they didn't originally choose. So maybe you're like, oh, this kid, you know what? The AP English fits for them, even though they didn't pick that. They're a 3.8 student, they can handle it. Because you have to make sure that everybody has a full schedule. Now, those people, those students may come back first day of school or during registration and have you change something, but then that's on an individual basis. And then they can make some of those decisions. You can tell them why you chose to do that. But if they really don't want that AP English, then it's like, okay, well, then you can take, biotech instead of biology. That will fix the problem. So you could give them some options. As counselors, you have to remember not to overload classes, right? Really important. Oops, let's see. The most difficult part is figuring out how many sections. So like I said, right at the beginning, the most difficult part is figuring out how many sections of each class, who can teach them, and then where to place them. I think the where to place them is really the hardest because that's what you end up moving around. So if we do our course requests correctly, that part will be much easier. And then, that's basically it. Oh, that was only half an hour. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Um, does anybody have any questions for Dr. G? I know this was a lot of information, and those of you who may not be familiar with the process may need to go back and watch us again and use her slide presentation to go through it and kind of step by step it. And she's been doing this for many years. So if you're in the process, you need to reach out to her. She's always willing to answer questions. But if there are any individual or specific questions you have right now, we have a little bit of time to take those questions.
Yeah, and most of this really is an overview of kind of what it takes to make the master schedule. Once you're in it, you'll see, I mean, it's playing with the courses, it's playing with the periods. Um, it's taking suggestions from other people, it's stepping back and looking at it.
Yeah, and you probably will have to create your own system. Dr. G says she uses like Legos or the charts that she makes, or I guess she visualizes and
I
has
do.
like moments of like where she's, doing some Tai Chi in the air. Um, but everyone has their own system. I mean, when I did master schedule, I had tiles, like magnetic tiles that we kind of moved around and manipulated before we put it into the system. So whatever works for you and your team is, I would say, is the best way to go. But you need to have a system, and you definitely need to put yourself in a student's shoes and many multiple student shoes, right? And kind of walk them through their day. That's always a very, very helpful process. And then, your master schedule kind of reflects your priorities too. So if you do have academies on your campus, that's a priority. If you do have like IB on your campus, right, that's a priority. Or your IA students, or maybe you have a high sped population. You want to make sure that they get the courses that they need. So whatever your team decides is something you need to schedule first, do that, and then work around what you have to create um, for for your students, and then kind of place in the next program. If you have Puente, you need to make sure that your Puente kids can get what they need. So just think about those programs. It's a good place to start.
And like I said, one of the most important things is that we as counselors get those course requests completed and that we double check that they are correct, that they have the number of classes that we need. Because if the cleaner they are, if someone else is making decisions for your kiddos, then the decision won't be as different as what you left. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, and if you are in a stage where you're pre 101, make sure that's more of an ITS function. So just make sure you reach out, set some time with Henry, and he can show you where and how to access all the components you'll need within Aries. So yeah, go ahead, Dr. G.
So for the academic plan, because I don't know if you guys remember, but years ago I was like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And finally we got it done. And then I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't figure it out. It took me a good year to figure out how to do the academic plans and how to set up the course, what are they called? The course packets. So if your school has not set up course packets, I can help with that. Tran is who helped me. So you can reach out to, well, I'm going to put his name out there. You can reach out to him. But you can also, I think I finally Googled it to really understand how to create the course packets on Aries. And then once you create them, it's just easy. You click on it, it populates that year, and then you take off all the ones you don't want, and then it's set up for you. So that's a really nice way because then ITS will transfer them from academic plan to course requests. So just in case somebody doesn't know how to do that, reach out to me. I will help.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we will give you back 28 minutes. I will post Dr. G's slideshow on the Padlet, and then I'll post all the recordings too at some point. That way, if you need to go back and rewatch the recordings, you can, or if you want to just share the recordings with your team. Thank you, everyone. Happy Friday.